Library computer. Data being received. Working.
Fascinating.
You're in the hands of an adolescent.
Welcome back, everybody. I have decided to do my What I've Read each month videos several times a month in several parts, probably 3 or 4 parts a month. It just lets me get them done a little quicker, and I hope that means I'll be able to stay reliable in doing them. It means if I get busy at one point and I'm a little bit late with a video, it just means there's maybe just 3 November videos rather than 4, or whatever it works out to be. I'm playing this by ear. So let's see what I've read in November of 2025 so far. I'm recording this on the 9th. Okay, first we have Thunderbirds Ring of Fire. This is, I think, is the 7th of the 10 Thunderbird novels that were done as tie-ins to the Super Marionation series that came out in the 1960s. This particular edition I'm showing the cover of is a 2/6 on the bottom, and I have no idea what that means. I know that there were 10 of these published, and this one was listed as number 7 in the file I found on the Internet Archive that reprints all 10 of them in electronic form. Anyway, these have all been fun novels. I think they've caught the atmosphere and the characters and the cool vehicles of the Thunderbird series quite effectively. This one's a little flawed, though. There's a bunch of plot threads in this one. The main plot has international rescue dealing with a massive volcanic eruption in South America. In addition to the people endangered at the volcano's location, the eruption causes a rift that speeds across the Pacific Ocean and heads right towards Tracy Island, the base of the Thunderbirds. But that's not all. Thunderbird 1 is damaged and it can't land until a part is replaced. This requires Lady Penelope and Parker to acquire a replacement part via theft, since there's no time to get it via normal channels. Then Brains, the scientist who designs all this stuff, has to do a mid-air transfer to get the part aboard Thunderbird 1. But before that happens, Lady Penelope and Parker have to deal with their archenemy, the Hood, who once again tries to steal the secrets of the Thunderbirds. And then the Navy decides that Tracy Island is a handy target for testing new missiles. When it's pointed out to a stuffy admiral that the island is inhabited, he just tells Jeff Tracy to evacuate and request reimbursement for the stuff he's lost. It's a fun novel, but there's just too much going on. The subplot with the Hood is very perfunctory. I think it might have been an editorial decision to include the Hood in every novel, except for the Lady Penelope-centered novels, which feature a different mad scientist villain. Anyway, he feels like he's just shoehorned in here without adding anything important to the main story at all. Perhaps the novel fell short of the required word count, and they had to put in more stuff and more subplots to get it out to where it needed to be. It still makes for a very pleasant visit to the Thunderbirds universe, but it was simply too crowded to be as fun as it could have been. The next book I finished was The Shadow, The Ghost in the Manor, by Walter Gibson, who originally wrote these for the pulp magazines in the 30s under the name Maxwell Grant. And this is an unusual shadow novel in that it makes little use of his agents. Rutledge Mann briefly appears. None of the other agents show up at all. And it's much less action-packed than usual. But that's okay, though. This novel is structured as a gothic mystery/whodunit. Has brothers set to inherit great wealth are being knocked off one by one. The murders take place in the same location in an old manor, with the killer seeming to be able to appear and disappear at will. And there is an old story that the manor is haunted. So, the mystery is a good one. It's depending on a specific gothic mystery trope to explain how the killer pulled off his crimes. The Shadow, of course, figures it out in time to prevent an innocent man from being charged with the crimes. And as is typical with Shadow novels, there's a nice plot twist at the end, even after it seems the crime has been solved. And we do get a nice action scene at the climax when the Shadow confronts the killer. So The Shadow, The Ghost in the Manor, highly recommended if you like either The Shadow or Gothic whodunit mysteries. The Empty Hours by Ed McBain. I have been reading through the 87th Precinct novels while listening to a podcast called Hark, where the hosts of the podcast discuss each novel after they've read it. And so this was the next episode for me to listen to, so the next one that I read. And that is a great cover, isn't it? Anyway, this really isn't a novel, though. It's a collection of 3 novellas featuring cases handled by the 87th Precinct. They were all published in different sources and then collected into this to be published as a book. The first case involves a woman found dead in her apartment, in which tracing her past uncovers some strange financial shenanigans that don't seem to make any sort of sense. The second is about the murder of a rabbi who was brutally stabbed to death. In both cases, there's an effective twist near the end that sends the case in a new direction to eventually identify the killer. The third case has Detective Cotton Hawes on a skiing vacation. And really, I wonder why any fictional detective ever bothers to go on vacation. They are pretty much destined to stumble over a corpse and end up working on a case. Happened to Columbo, happened to Hercule Poirot, happened to Miss Marple all the time, happened to Jessica Fletcher all the time. If you're a detective, just don't bother taking a vacation. You're going to have to solve a murder. This time, a young lady is stabbed to death with a sharpened ski pole while riding a ski lift. Hawes begins looking into the case when he loses confidence in the local cops who, from his point of view, blunder inexpertly around the crime scene. Now, the three of these are excellent novellas. It's a reminder that Ed McBain was an expert storyteller in both long-form and short-form tales. Next, we have more crime solving, but of a completely different style, Partners in Crime by Agatha Christie. Now, this features Tommy and Tuppence Beresford, a man and a woman who are married to each other and banter a lot in their relationship, and it's great bantering. It's fun to hang out with these two. They were introduced in one of Dame Agatha's early books, The Secret Adversary, which was a spy thriller with a mystery element in it. Now they're married, and they become private eyes. Well, they sort of become private eyes. They're asked to take over an established private eye office by the British government. This office was being used by enemy agents for espionage purposes. It was kind of like a dead drop. Once there, if they're contacted by enemy spies, they can arrange for the capture. In the meantime, they're free to take other cases to keep up the pretense of being a working private eye place. So a few of the short stories in this collection have Tommy and Tuppence dealing with the spy stuff, but most of them involve them investigating cases as private detectives. And Christie has fun with these stories, using each one to gently parody different fictional detectives that were popular at the time, in the 1920s when this was written. The mysteries are good, and both Tommy and Tuppence get opportunities to be the one who figures everything out, with them deliberately choosing which fictional detective to emulate. So in one, Tommy is disguised as a priest, and it's a parody of the Father Brown stories. In another, they're discussing a case in a cafe, and they solve it by reading the newspaper accounts, which is reminiscent of Baron Orzay's Man in the Corner stories. So each one parodies a different fictional detective. Some of them are pretty obscure now after 100 years because they just haven't stayed popular, but it's a fun idea all the same, and Christie really shows off her sense of humor in these stories. They're just really fun to read. Now, there's one oddity that I think adds to the fun when it's discussed. In The Secret Adversary, Inspector Japp is mentioned as being a real person, and Japp is Hercule Poirot's regular police contact. So that implies that Tommy and Tuppence and Poirot exist in a shared universe, the Christieverse, if you will. But in the story in which Christie is making fun of her own popular detective, Tommy very heavily implies that Poirot is another fictional detective. So, do they share the same reality or not? And I realize there's lots of fans of these stories who just don't care about this. There are people, and they're still legitimate fans of Christie's work, who really don't care about issues like crossovers and shared universes and all of that. And that's great. But there's those of us who really like to nerd out totally by thinking about it and discussing it. So in this case, do they share the same reality or not? I like to think that Tommy knows about Poirot from Captain Hastings' published memoirs and that they do share a universe. But Christie gives us conflicting information on this. So, discuss. Springblade, Battle Zone by Greg Walker. This is the 6th in a series called Springblade, which is the name of a sort of mercenary unit that works for the president and goes on particularly secret missions. It's the first one I read in this series, and it will sadly probably be the last one. In this one, a DEA agent is lost in the jungles in Burma, which is infested with soldiers working for the local drug lord. So, fortunately, he has jungle survival training, so he just might survive until the Springblade team arrives to pull him out. The trouble with this novel is it takes forever to gather the team and finally insert them into Burma. There's some action and suspense stuff involving the agent as he avoids capture and he kills a few mercenaries to get food and weapons. But between those incidences, we get chapter after chapter of each individual team member being notified, of briefings, of plannings, and bits of characterization. All of this is well written in of itself, but in the end, it's just padding. In this 198-page novel, an action-adventure novel where we go in expecting action, we don't see the team arrive in Burma until about page 130. And a lot of the final action happens off-page. At one point, they spot the guy they're looking for because he has an infrared tape, a strip of infrared tape strapped to his hat, and that's great. And so they say, okay, we're going to have to send out a team to get him and bring him back to this defensive area we've set up, and then evacuate him. And then there's a page break and maybe a scene from the point of view of the guy leading the bad guys, and then we're back with Springblade, and they're saying, hey, well, we've recovered the agent. Good job, men. We didn't get to see any of that. Even parts of the final battle, when the bad guys attack while the team is arranging to evacuate, even some of that happens off page. Now, the parts we do get to see are exciting, and to be fair, the time spent establishing characters meant we do care about a team member who doesn't make it. But gee whiz, this is an action-adventure novel. Get to the action quicker and let us experience it. The final book I have read so far, over the first 9 days of November, is Edgar Rice Burroughs' The Moon Men. And this is the second in a trilogy. This is the book we will be discussing on the Edgar Rice Burroughs podcast in the next episode that we hope to be recording near the end of November. It's set a few centuries after The Moon Maid, the first book in the trilogy. And it presents us with a bleak vision of Earth after we were conquered by the Calcars, the humanoids from the moon. The protagonist is Julian IX, a descendant of the first book's hero. And Julian and his parents live in a world pretty much destroyed by the Calcars, who have established a brutal and inefficient communist society. And Burroughs makes sure we definitely see his point. The Calcars have divided the former United States into territories called Tivos, spelled backward. That's Soviet, spelled backwards. And the metaphor, though, isn't heavy-handed, but instead it provides the story this provides a setting for a story of repression and rebellion and violence. Among other things, it's an examination of whether centuries of persecution can drain the spirit out of a once proud people. Julian eventually leads a rebellion, but there's no clear-cut happy ending. It is, after all, the middle book in a trilogy. Like Lord of the Rings or The Empire Strikes Back, it ends with the good guys seemingly down for the count, so we can go into the climax with some really heroic things being required if the good guys aren't going to win. If the good guys are going to win, actually. So that is it for the first 9 days of November of 2025. And I think I'll be posting this on the morning of November 11th when I don't have stuff posting on my blog. once again, thank you for the people who are watching these videos and giving them an occasional like and leaving an occasional comment. I'm told if you like and comment and subscribe, it can help eventually get me more viewers, but I'm really not that worried about it. I just like geeking out about my books. I like being able to talk about them. And as long as I have a couple of viewers out there, as long as I'm getting the couple of dozen hits I'm having and the couple of likes and the occasional comment, I'm happy. I don't expect to be famous from this or to be able to monetize it or anything. I just appreciate those of you who are watching and have... well, that's it. Thank you again, and I'll be back with another video soon.